Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Valentino Stoll.
Hey now.
I'm Charles Maxwood from Top End Devs. And it's been a while, Valentino. We've kind of had a lot going on, just picking things back up. Do you want to give people a quick update as to where you're at? And then I'll do the same thing, and then we can dive into the rest of this topic for today.
Yeah. Earlier in the year, I moved gigs. I was at Doximity, and I switched over to the lovely team at Gusto, working on AI-related stuff. Pretty wild things happening. Yeah, lots of stuff happening.
So when you say you're working on AI stuff for Gusto, are you integrating AI-based features into what Gusto does? Or, what does that look like, I guess? It seems like there's a wide world of things that people are doing with AI.
There is a wide world of things. So they have a, chatbot, Gus, who's like the assistant for your business, your small business. And, they're basically just integrating their entire ecosystem into the chatbot.
Okay.
Amongst other things. There's a lot of other initiatives. That's the one I've been focused on in my team.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty much anything that you would want to do as a small business, think about what an AI assistant might help out with that, especially when you have a small business platform you can plug into. It's kind of exciting.
Very, very cool. I'd love to dig into that. It looks like a lot of fun. So for me, about the same time you transitioned over to Gusto, I dropped my contract and went and worked for PrizePicks. And so I've been at PrizePicks since March. And I've spent quite a bit of time working on a lot of the social features. So if you get into the app and you want to follow another member's profile, or they have the feeds where you can see what other people are wagering or stuff like that. It kind of makes it fun, and you're able to kind of see more of the things that other people are doing, and kind of build stuff off of that. And anyway, I've been spending a lot of time on that and on the profile stuff. So that's where a lot of my work has come. It's actually kind of funny because my wife and I will be sitting watching TV, and a PrizePicks ad will come up, and it's like, hey, did you know that you could, whatever. And I look at her and I go, yeah, I built that. Or at least I built the back end of it, right?
Are you on there, making your picks,
No, in fact, my track record on picking the right stuff to win is abysmal. I mean, obviously as an employee, I can't actually play for real money,
right.
But, if I want to play, I can play, and it's kind of fun. I just, I can't deposit or withdraw money. And so
that makes sense.
Anyway, it's just, yeah, it's so it's all in fun, but yeah, I almost never win. So
it is funny to see ads pop up and you're like, hey, I know that.
Yeah. But my deal is I don't really follow NFL or NBA or, any of the big sports that people are in there playing on. So I think I'd have a better shot if I was like a diehard Eagles fan or something, and so it's like, I'm going to put something in on every Eagles game, but I don't, because I just don't care. Yeah. But yeah, so we were talking before we got recording, and you said that you'd been working on this autogenesis stuff, and you built a gem.
There's a term I came across called Autogenetic, which basically just means self-generating. And
okay,
I've started to explore what it might look like for these AI things to just assemble themselves things that let them do more, rather than having me decide what it should do more.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my exploration is this gem it's a Ruby gem called agentic. I started as just I wanted a way to do plan and execution workflows. So if you're not familiar with those, it's a way for you to have an AI thing, an LLM, create a plan, and then execute that plan. And so you can think Claude Code, right, is a perfect example of how this kind of started in a more practical way. There were others before them, but a plan to execute is a very common pattern for AI stuff. And as I was building it, I had these agents that I was manually creating, and I thought, why am I creating these things? There has to be a way that the plan can just be like, okay, what kinds of, what do I need in order to accomplish this goal, right? And then I have, if I introduce concepts to the LLM that it knew how it could use them and how it could build them, could it do it effectively? And so the obvious one is agent, right? Like you have instructions and it can do things. It has tools available to it. And so can an LLM with just knowledge about like that construct build its own and assemble its own agents to accomplish tasks that it has to do? And so that's where I kind of like really dug into this agentic gem and started, I created this like way to assemble agents based on just like instructions and giving it a role. And with that like primitive, giving it a name, a role, and instructions, throwing a task at it and be like, hey, like assemble whatever agents you need to accomplish this task and give me the result of that.
Right. So it reminds me a little bit of some of the conversations we've had with other people about AI agents and LLMs, where effectively, I think kind of the basic version is you have one agent or one program and you give it a task and it just kind of runs until it gets the stuff done, right? And so then we've talked, specifically I'm thinking of when we talked to Obi about Ray, where he said, I've got multiple agents, right? So I've got like a calendar scheduler agent, I've got a this agent, I've got a that agent, I've got another agent, right? And so they all kind of specialize. And then he's got one or two that kind of orchestrate things at different levels. And so, and a lot of that was done deliberately, right? It's like, I'm going to have a calendar agent, I'm going to have a chat agent, I'm going to have a whatever else agent. And what you're saying is in your case, you're saying, okay, I just need this task done.
Right.
And so you make up what the agents are, right? And so you're giving that or that level of design and orchestration to the LLM as well.
Exactly. And because it's object oriented, right, and all these types and constructs are defined in code, I could save the artifacts of those, right? So like as it's building out these agents to accomplish tasks, it's saving them off for use later, right? So like if it goes and if it has like a bigger plan that it's trying to get through and a goal it's trying to accomplish and it's creating all these subtasks and making agents, it can then reuse those agents as it goes through the plan. And so like, let's say it's like just like a research agent that it decides to make. And it goes and it researches some content and then pulls back information and saves it in a file. And that's like what it was built to do. And then it comes across another task and it's like, oh, I need to research about this new thing. You can just reuse that agent. And because like it then becomes available to the system as like, hey, these are agents that are available, right, at every given turn in the task. It can choose to pick one of those existing ones or build a new one. And sometimes, if the like task is not related enough to what it's trying to do, like let's say it was like just generic research on the web, but it needed to research in a specific file, then it would create a new agent for file research.
Oh, right.
So it's kind of interesting to watch this thing kind of bloom, right? As you give it different things to do.
So one thing that I'm wondering about is it seemed like some of the sub jobs or subclasses of agent, or however you want to look at that, they had pretty specific functions that they needed, right? So for example, talking to a calendar or, connecting to a particular service or things like that. Does it create those too and actually write the function code for those?
Sometimes. Right? So that's the beauty of this, is like it's an experiment and things don't always
It really is coming from my job.
Sometimes it does effectively do that, When it runs, there are cases where it like, because I do have limiters on it that like don't let it like recursively get to itself. So if it fails to do something, it doesn't get stuck and it can just move on and say, I wasn't able to do that. And so it does do that. But yeah, I would say the more complicated things, it tries to just break it apart into smaller things and try and accomplish those. And so I haven't really pushed the limits of it yet.
Right. So I guess one thing that I'm curious about with some of this, because I guess you could also just say, hey, here are some functions that I just have available, right? And then it could build the agents around those however it wants. But I guess I'm wondering, how granular does it get? And I'm also curious what the implications are for, let's say, I want to actually build and design something like this on my own. I don't want to do the autogenetic stuff. I just want to, I want to decide where the boundaries are for my agents. Does this inform those decisions for you? But let's back up real quick. Like how granular does it get, and how does it handle some of that stuff? Because I'm imagining, for example, let's say it did need to do some scheduling or calendar management, right? It could have a connect to Google Calendar, and I have these 6 functions that it can do, or it could say, I'm just a busy checker, and I'm an appointment updater, and I'm right. And so you could end up with agents that do a bunch of different things as opposed to one that just kind of generically manages Google Calendar.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I built this in a very modular way because I wanted the ability to have like agents that I specifically made with certain things. And so you can build your own agent, and there's even like you can give it like specifications if you don't want to fill in all the details. So you can create like kind of a spec for how the agent should be built.
Okay.
But yeah, there's like a register, so you could like register your agents, and then it would make use of those like in the normal process as it's looking to accomplish tasks. And you could bypass all of it, right? You don't have to use.
Yeah.
You don't have to use
I'm just curious.
Self-assembly. Yeah.
Right. But what? How far does the self-assembly go?
It goes pretty deep. Yeah, I mean, so I built like a capability system, I call it, where like let's say a capability could be most similar to like tools, I guess in the modern realm. But like I think of it more of like, okay, be able to search the web, like read a file, generate a PDF. Like these are all capabilities, right? And so I made like kind of an agent capability system that you can register with the agentic system and just say, okay, you have, and it's like all defined abstractly with, okay, you have this capability and here's the implementation function, and it takes inputs and it generates a normalized response. And these like specifications that you're generating for the capability help inform the agentic system as well, what it can do, right, as it's building agents too. So like you can basically define kind of like what is capable for agents to be built with, right? And so it's not just going to go and like say, oh, I can go and like connect Google Calendar and like automate a huge pipeline. There's only so many capabilities that you can register at a time. And so like I made it kind of with that informed decision of like, I don't want to just make stuff up, because it was at first not really doing too great. But as soon as you put some like kind of guardrails around it and give it like, oh, you can only kind of do these things, it performs really well. And so like when you're, especially for, it's funny now that like deep research is a thing. Right. It's like, that's like the easiest thing to do with all of these agents. It's just like, hey, I want to put together a report and like search the web, right? Like so easy to do, right?
Yeah.
And so like what happens when you want to do like next things and have it like, like you said, talk to APIs or things like that. It's interesting to see how it evolves.
Yeah. Does it ever evolve? I'm gonna kind of build my own tools or my own capabilities, or do you just lock that down? So it's like, no, you have to ask.
So I've tried, my initial goal was, could I get it to build itself? Right. So like, if I threw just like a goal at it, like, hey, I want to create like a self-assembling agent system in Ruby, right? And could I get that to actually happen?
Right.
And what agents would it build? I created a coding agent for Ruby, right? It created like a I don't know, PM like agent to like manage the project, right? It did all of these things. And it got like
a QA agent, maybe. Yeah.
It got to a certain point where it was just like, all right, it just spent way too long. And it like, it said, oh, like I've gone through too many turns and now I can't.
Right.
And like, I say it was decent, it wasn't what I would code.
Right.
but it's a little surprising how far it did get and the agents that it built. And so I've actually reused and repurposed some of the agents that it made in my own
Well,
side
interesting.
projects, which is kind of fun. And the probably the biggest benefit to me personally is I got to use Olama locally.
Mm-hmm.
So I could just use StarCoder or something like that to run on my own machines and not have to spend any money.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to evolve it. It has this like extension system that I'm trying to like adapt where you can give it a domain. So like if you want it to be scoped on healthcare, then you can add like specific knowledge to that domain and have it use it in its assembly and execution. And I have like this initial like self-learning system that I've started to explore where it keeps track of records of itself and tries to create patterns and like strategies based on how you use it. So like it'll like slowly evolve in different ways based on how you like train it ultimately or tell it how to learn. And so I've been exploring. That's probably where I want to spend more of my time next, is kind of getting it to recognize things that it does well and doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I tell it and inform it when it's doing something that it shouldn't be doing or not? I haven't really figured out that like human intervention aspect.
Right.
At the moment, it's kind of just like making that up on its own. And so it's kind of interesting to explore what models do and what they learn on their own, because they are all different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of fun to rerun the same experiments with different models and see how it evolves differently.
Yeah, I bet. So I'm a little curious, as you get into this, like what is it showing you or telling you about using agents or building agents? Like, what has it taught you any lessons that's like, when I do this on this other project, I ought to build my agents more this way or that way?
I would say the biggest thing I've kind of taken away is that LLMs are not good at like managing their own artifacts, right? Like if you tell it to like do something and like keep track of something, it's going to do it differently almost every time.
Mm-hmm.
And like you might see some normalization, but like it's going to take a lot of prompting to get it to like be any like deterministic at all. And so I've found that like trying to help it avoid maybe some of those pathways to generate specific things in certain formats, to just avoid those. Getting back to the lessons, it's hard to tell what is a good lesson or not,
Right.
because so much of it is like the LLMs deciding what to do. And I guess what I found is the more structure and rails that you give to LLMs, the more deterministic you can make what it does.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't know anything.
Right.
But if you can help kind of visualize things for it, it seems to produce much better results.
Right.
And what I mean by that is like, you know, it has a ton of training data. And so you kind of know, like you have a good idea and understanding of what training data has just by asking it a bunch of questions, right? But you can get an idea for like what concepts it has too, right? And so I like to like poke the models all the time on what concepts it can recognize, right? And if you give it a new concept, can it like continue to like reason about that concept and like mutate it as like you would, right? Like if you're going to create like a user object in Rails, right? Like, and you wanted to add a new attribute to it, is like that straightforward? Like would you be like, well, why would I add, right, like a shopping cart to a user? Maybe you would, right? But like would you add like a, I don't know, something super unrelated, like I don't know what would be that. Maybe that's a bad example. Let's say you had a school. Would you add like a grocery store to it, right?
Right.
Can the LLM like know that kind of thing? The answer is yes, right? The LLMs are very good at those connections of things, right? And so like the further away that the concepts are, actually better to like the generations they'll get, right? Because that's what it's doing. It's like trying to hone in on very like similar things, right? And like what the next things are. And so if you can give it more like funneling, going back to Obi's like, narrowing the path, right? The more you can do that, even on a conceptual level, the better, right? And so that's where I've kind of like been blown away by how well this works. Is like
Hmm.
I could just give it more and more concrete concepts for it to reason about, and it can figure out how they work together, right? And then, okay, well, if you then help it, like tell it how those things connect and work together, it does even better. And so, like, and the more things that you can, like, glue together and firm up, like, the better that it performs and the more deterministic you can get it. And so, I guess that's kind of what I've taken is like, if you can decouple that idea and like make a bunch of things so that you can define those like concepts and how they work together, then you'll get the best result from all of this.
Gotcha. So, which is the most important to master then? Is it the prompt? Is it the definition of the problem? Is it more refinement on the tool?
It's always the definition of the problem. I mean, LLMs are dumb, right? Like they can't come up with their own stuff, right? Like you could try your best and like tell it to create the best company in the world. It's not going to make any money, right? Like it has no desires, like it's missing a lot of the things that it takes to like
Right.
create something substantial, like to create something that's meaningful to you because it doesn't really care about you. It doesn't care about anything. So, it's always, that's why, spec driven development, if you've heard that, like that's
Hmm.
become so popular because like really this what you're telling it to make and do is like the most important part.
Yeah,
And so the
it
more,
sounds
yeah,
a little bit like, so we had a conversation on JavaScript Jabber with Eric. I can't remember his last name. Anyway, he works for Google, for Amazon, and he was on talking about their Kiro editor. That was kind of, we talked about it, and literally like 2 weeks later, Cursor added their killer feature, which was the plan, right? So you had agent, you had ask, and now you have plan. And so it'll actually pull together the entire plan and things like that. And so it sounds like what you're talking about is the better your plan is and the better you can specify what you want, the better the tool works.
yeah, totally. And the better the plan works.
Yeah.
Forget the tools on their own. Like the tools are just actions that can
Hmm.
be taken, right? And so it's all about the plan. It's all about
Right.
what you really want to do, right? Like if I tell my son to go outside and like clean up, I wouldn't expect anything to happen. Like what does that mean? It wouldn't mean anything for me either if I was asked to go outside and clean up. I guess like rake,
Right.
like I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess part of my question then is, it seems like AI is evolving so fast, right? And so like you were talking about this autogenetic AI agent stuff. And I was like, I mean, you explained it to me in like 2 sentences and I understood what it was, but I don't know if it's something that I would have dreamed up on my own. And it seems like, this is just another step along the way toward wherever we wind up with AI. And so part of me is wondering, is this a tool or a technique that people are going to start adopting now? And where does it lead us to over the next 6 months to a year?
I think we're already starting to see that, right? Like where I first saw this style of AI use was like error handling. Some error happens while you're developing, and you ask an LLM, "Can you fix this? Can you handle this case?" And uh, a lot of times, especially for JavaScript errors,
Right.
that was like the classic example back in the day when you're using an LLM and you want, JSON back and it gave you improperly formatted JSON
Hmm.
and you ask the LLM again, hey, fix this JSON. And
Right.
99% of the time, it'll fix that JSON so you don't have an issue. And this goes a
I
step
feel
further
lazy when I do that, but I do it all the time.
all the time, right? And so like this makes a lot of sense. And this is a little bit like autogenetic, right? Like you're getting the system, like the self-healing aspects is like autogenetic, like you're getting the system itself to generate, like and I think it's going like we're starting to see, products crop up around this kind of thing, like security analysis, security prevention, right? Like being able to get ahead of like these issues ahead of time, having something like we're kind of seeing the ambient response so far of things that are just latent sitting in your system that are then analyzing and then getting actions to set up to do later, which is less like of this, maybe generative
Mm-hmm.
aspect of itself, but it is a little bit like, still that self-healing, like, improving nature, which are along the same lines in my mind. Um, and so I'm wondering if we're more like getting to that, like, NVIDIA is trying to make their own like kernel, right? Where an LLM sits on the kernel, which is really interesting. And what does it look like when the system that you're using in general, right, is like an agent, right? And
Yeah, that's
it's a
really
little,
fascinating.
that's like kind of the mind bending, right? Like,
Yeah,
okay, like if you just log on to your computer and you start talking to it and it can do stuff for you, like kind of wild, right? Like, what does
yeah,
that do to apps, right? When you can be like, all right, well, create Slack. I want to communicate with my friends, right? And like
right.
it goes and
I was
does
going to
that.
ask, how far down the rabbit hole does it go, right? Where it's okay, well, I'm going to generate myself, because initially I could see it where it's like, okay, I've got a browser, I've got a this, I've got a that. But yeah, eventually it just gets to the point where it's like, I'm going to generate a windowing system, and right, I'm going to generate a something I can make API calls with. And so, my interface to the world through my operating system is completely different from yours, because it built something around how I think about how I communicate with the world, and how I research things, and how I approach different things, as opposed to you. And yeah, and so I don't
Yeah,
even
and,
use
and
the standard app. I use the custom whatever that it knows I like.
I mean, I think Google is onto the right thing with their agent to agent protocols, but I think they were just too early, right? Like
Hmm.
we need more protocols. Like everybody like trashes MCP for being like, oh, it's just like a wraparound open API, which maybe it is, but like I think the definitions of the specifications are the value, right? Like defining what it means to be a tool, how that tool interacts, how it can respond,
Right.
how it's defined, and then uh, going further, like, what are the protocols that can communicate with it? Right? And so like all of that stuff is very important, and like that is kind of like what is missing. And what will be most important if we move to this world of like an operating system level, right? Is like
Hmm.
it'll just be a huge like pool of protocols that like, okay, if you're creating an app like on this new system, the artifact of that is the protocol of how to use that then other things can inspect and then build for, right? And so I see this kind of like, and it's a little funny because like the path to get there is like a bunch of trash, right? Like the path to get where we are today is like currently trash, So like we had to get through all of this like bad
Yeah.
generation before to be like confident enough now where it's like really good
Hmm.
and you're kind of like impressed by it. But like to get to that next level again, like you have to get through all of the
Right.
trash work again. And we're already seeing that with like AI slop, right? Like that's the new thing.
We've always done this, right? It's just, it feels like the pace of iteration is so much faster, right? I mean, go back through Rails, right? We had, some people had some other great ideas. They put them into Merb. We went through that heinous upgrade, to Rails 3, which was super painful. The asset pipeline situation, right, where we went from Sprockets to Webpacker, ouch, to currently PropShaft, which is better, but it's still not like super intuitive, friendly, whatever, fixes all my
Right.
issues, right? It's just way more approachable than Webpacker, right? And so we're going through the same thing here, where I mean, I remember having conversations with just regular people like my father-in-law, where he's like, well, never trust AI because it hallucinates all the time. And I said, well, give it a couple of years, because they're going to keep improving it, right? And so does it still hallucinate? Yeah. But does it do it a lot less, and does it have a lot more tools at its disposal? Absolutely. And so again, like you're saying, I mean, we're just gonna kind of have to see how this evolves, and it'll be really interesting to see what gets picked up and what gets dropped, and if we find a better way. I mean, one of the issues I have with things like MCP is that it takes up a whole ton of my context to tell it all the things it can do. And and it's like, no, I want the context to be, here's all the stuff that Chuck cares about, right? Figure the F out, right? And so,
Yeah, it's interesting. A concept was brought up at the AI engineering code conference or code summit recently in New
uh-huh.
York. A concept called progressive disclosure, and it's an interaction design like principle of just like incrementally like disclosing new like information to a user,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or to an interface. And this is now being applied a lot to like coding agents because of this exact problem you're saying, where all right, you have like, I don't know, thousands of MCP servers and tools and documents and like there's no way it can keep all that in its context. How do you like surface the right things at the right time? Right? Like this
Yeah.
is a common like current problem. And this seems to be like the best solution that I've seen so far of like basically creating like smaller chunked like summarizations of what the different things are
Mm-hmm.
that can be surfaced and then providing it a link ultimately to
Right.
find out more, right?
Right.
Like the man pages, right? Like man,
Mm-hmm.
that's why like CLI tools will always work better than any MCP server you set up because like the help mechanisms are so like token
Yeah.
conscious
Yep.
and also like available and straightforward. Like it's all normalized, right? Like there's a protocol that like,
Right.
it follows, right? And gives you the information that is needed in order to learn how to use it. But also you could just be like, show me all the commands I have, right? And it doesn't give you like pages of text. It gives you like a one liner of like all the
Mm-hmm.
commands, right?
Yep.
And like that is very valuable to like an LLM, right?
Yep.
And so like this kind of concept, I think is being more and more just like Claude skills are a perfect example of this progressive disclosure, where you have like this metadata, the front matter they call it, where you can say, hey, this is like information about what the skill does and is, and the things that can be used with it, and the tools that it uses, and like just surface this right to all the other ones, and it does like an incredible job.
Yep.
Way better, yeah, way better than the tools.
Yep.
Not that tools are valuable, but I think we're like kind of moving away from the idea of these like actionable things needing to be dumped at the LLM all the time.
Right. So I kind of want to spin a little bit back toward the autogenetic AI team, that it kind of spins up its own set of agents to do the work. Are you using this anywhere in production or experimenting with this anywhere where it's likely to go into production?
No, not yet. I do have some experiments in the works of using it within a Rails app
Uh-huh.
that I hope to get to production. It's hard because like the models still aren't quite there.
Right.
They're better, right? Uh, I, the best performance I've seen is from Opus 4.5, but it's just like so it's a little less expensive now. But like,
Right.
yeah, not worthwhile to like introduce you know, in any official capacity on my own
So,
to be cost effective.
yeah, so I guess the other question related to that then is, and it sounds like the answer to this question is going to be, yeah, that's correct. But so the main limitation to this is the limitations on the capabilities of the models. And so if we had stronger models that were able to write better code or make better decisions, or maybe had a larger context window so it could figure out more stuff and remember more stuff, those kinds of things would make this a much more effective approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I see production changing, right? Like when
Uh-huh.
people say, well, is this in production? You know, your local system is ultimately becoming production now, right? With all of these
What do you
coding
mean?
agents. Like if I wanted to, like for my job personally, maybe I'm biased because like I'm a programmer, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like if part of my job is to like review code, right? And so I have a coding agent hooks up to the GitHub CLI and can review the PRs that are open that I'm
Mm-hmm.
assigned to and give me a breakdown and have some actionable comments like
Yeah,
that I can
cloud reviews
add
are
and
code at
decide to
work.
do, right? And so like all of that stuff is kind of like your local machine is becoming more and more of a production system that you can run more and more things on, right? And especially as we
Okay.
start like as I start to see this stuff coming, like I feel like the production line is going to blend with local so much because of what you can produce on your local machine now, where you don't need to offload that work in the cloud anymore because you can just generate a quick HTML page, and whether or not it like persists or not, like that's fine because it was just to show you something, right? Or to do something and like create that interface, and that those like the interfaces are becoming temporary, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and at least for our work, right?
Yeah.
But I see it more and more, right? And so like you can do like a big question is always like, well, what can't you do with Claude Code, right? What can't you do with Chat GPT, right? What can't you do with these things on their own? And it's the answer to that becomes less and less things, right? And so if you're running all of this on your machine anyway, like where is production, right? If you're doing more and more work on these things. And
Yeah.
so I see it as like your local environment kind of like taking on more of the chunk out of that production. And I use this library a lot on my local machine to do different tasks that I know it does well, right? And so like really most of the exploration that we're seeing is, well, what does it work well doing? And the answer to that is like more things because the models are getting better, right? But it's also like go use it, try it out, and if it works for you, like just keep using it,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
think I think if I can restate what you're saying, because whenever we think of production, like, if you work at a company that, has like this giant Rails app or, microservices or what, however you're architected, production is that set of code that you deploy out to the web servers so that people can interact. But what you're saying is production anymore is wherever the work's getting done. And so if, in that case, then you're using, for example, the autogenetic autogenetic tool to get work done locally because that's where the work is done. And similarly in a lot of these other cases, the line's going to get blurred from is it on the production to server to, you know, where am I getting the work done, right? So is it going to work on my machine and then connect to some quote unquote production system out there in the cloud, or, and how much of this is going to live back here with wherever I'm at and wherever I'm doing the work and wherever I'm interacting with things.
yeah, we had Dave Kimura on at
Hmm.
one point where he was talking about his local server setup, which is just mind-boggling.
Yeah,
If you ever get to talk to Dave, ask him about his local server setup. Uh, but
I kind of
this
envy
was
it
like,
too.
my gosh, right? But this was years ago too
Yeah.
now, right? But he had it to a point where, he could basically send a web request to this server with a job to do, right? Like almost like a job in queue, but to his
Hmm.
local machine, right?
Right.
And I see like more like from a system that like, was had an app and everything. I think this was for transcribing the videos on
Hmm.
drifting Ruby, right? And he had this job that was like, okay, like in queue the transcription process, and it would like basically trigger back home at his computer and run it through some local models so he wouldn't have to pay for any of it,
Right.
and then transcribe it, right? And then send the request back up. And so again, like perfect example of like where is production, right? Like
Right.
granted, he has his own like legit production setup at home,
Yeah, he has a server
but
rack and all kinds of stuff at home.
like it's still the same. It's still the same. Like, where's the work getting
Yeah.
done? I feel like more people don't want it to get done in the cloud. Like all of the DHH stuff, has been pushing back against the cloud and having, machines running in your closet, right? I feel like that's just going to become more and more popular. And like, what does that mean
Yeah.
then for production if you're distributing it like that?
Yeah, and
Yeah, I don't
that's
know.
really interesting too, right? Because Yeah, it seems like the way you're talking about this, yeah, a lot of that becomes a lot more not only possible but convenient, right? Where I have more control, I have more capabilities, it's more personalized, and it's all because it's right here in front of me. And so then these services in the cloud become less about, oh, what can I do with the user interface, and a lot more about, hey, what can you do for me in whatever thing I'm trying to accomplish?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, imagine the day where you can run like a GPT-5 level model, like just on a computer in the background, right? Like eventually it'll get there. And so like what does that mean, right?
Hmm.
If you're like no longer need like the internet to do that kind of computation, right?
Right.
And like we still need the internet because we like that's how we communicate. We still have to like communicate to like solve any real problem.
Right.
But yeah, again, it like turns more into like the protocol and communication layers more than anything. I just see that aspect of things eating away more of this than anything.
So one last question I guess I have on this, and it's somewhat related to something you said before, but also related to this approach that you've got here where you've got it kind of auto-generating agents. And before what you said was, and I don't remember if it was before the call or not, but you mentioned that you're not writing as much code, right? And so my question is I guess there are two parts to this. So I'll ask the first one is this has changed the way that you do your job, right?
Yes and no. I mean, this particular project, I have another project called the AI Software Architect that is like literally just markdown files, and that does most of my job for me. And it's great. And I would say yes. Like, you know, it's hard because like coming if you're new, right, coming into the industry, like you still need to have like the knowledge and experience of like how to develop and practice software and systems, how systems work. Maybe the you don't have to know about like semicolons and where to put like syntax stuff more, but you still need to know how to build systems and how to integrate and the concept building. I see that becoming more prevalent and more maybe something that people should focus on is that conceptual like conceptualization and compression and like managing and thinking through those concepts, because that is ultimately what your job becomes when you just lean heavy into all these agents is like you're just conveying concepts that you want to create that don't exist, right? And like it can't do that because it's not trained on those concepts, right? And so it's like really just comes down to like and again, I hate to keep like mentioning DHH, but like, all of his old stuff coming up is coming up again, where it's like, software is writing, right? Like when you're writing software, you're really author. You're like, it's a communication like thing. So like my job is still the same, right? I still need to like communicate in very specific ways to get what I want out of it. And the better I communicate, the better the things work, right? In the long run and maintain better, right? And people can like work with it too, right? And so nothing has really changed, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, except it seems like you're operating at a different level where you're actually now telling systems what you want instead of getting in and telling the system what to do, if that makes sense. Right, where you're writing more prompts and less code.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I feel like that's true of most people at this point.
Yeah. Yeah,
And if
well,
not, I would like to hear from you.
right. Well, yeah. And yeah, I'm just thinking of all the reasons why you may end up in a slightly different situation, but um I I would be speculating, and I don't know how useful that is. I guess the second part of this question then is, so let's imagine that I've been doing this for a while, right? I've been writing Rails for 20 years now. But I talk to other people and, it's 10 years or 15 years or 5 years or whatever. So I'm out there, I'm building apps in Ruby, and I'm looking at things like this and saying, okay, well, now you have code writing code. You have models writing code. A lot of this is more prompt engineering than software engineering, but you have to understand the software engineering. So what does my job look like, within the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And what do I need to be paying attention to and learning so that I'm not just a repository for I can generate code because it looks like a machine's going to be able to do that soon.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, the machines still generate things that people need to know about, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's not like it's creating novel things. It's not creating HTTP, right? Like, it's not creating its own protocols, which maybe will be the another future, right?
Maybe.
But so, like, people still need to understand those concepts, right? How does HTTP work? Like, if you're making something that you want to put on the internet, like, the internet isn't going to change in the next 10 years. Maybe it will, but like unlikely, right? And so, like, you still have these protocols that are used that you need to understand, you know? You need to understand, HTML, maybe not so much the HTML like aspects of things, but like how it's communicated and served, right? And how users see it. If you're like doing dynamic content and programmatic like flows, like you need to understand like system processing and architecture and you know best practices for like how services communicate to each other, right? Like there's a bunch of fundamentals that are still applicable like in traditional computer science. And maybe like the whole testing aspect of things is changing, like how you test and what you test. Like I feel like we're still not, all in agreement on that those aspects of things anyway, right? But
Yep.
it's still there. People still like I wouldn't trust delivering anything to people that pay me money, right? If I didn't test it, because I don't want to have to like be a customer support person,
Right.
right? And like also like a little bit shame on you. Right? Like
Right. So it seems like though that the skill set has shifted from being able to sit down and actually like crank the code out to being able to ask for what you want, but it also seems like what you're saying is you still have to conceptually understand how software goes together and how the systems work so that you can intelligently ask for what you want and you can also intelligently validate what you get.
right. Yeah, you have to know the concepts. I mean, circling back to that, right? Like uh yeah, you may not need to know Git, but you have to know how code change flow works, right?
Yep.
Like even if it uses SVN or God forbid you use SVN, but like if you use some other like code management tool, right? Like you need to know how those things work just fundamentally so that you can be like what change, right? Like so you know how to ask the thing for the very specific things. Maybe it can like make the add the changes that you need and like revert things when they go wrong, right? But you need to know those keywords, right? You need to know that those are possible and you need to know the concept. So again, back to the concepts, there's just like a bunch of concepts you need to like know, right? So that you can like really max out with these coding agents.
Right. So I guess the final question I'll ask, because I think this is just getting us to an interesting place, is the way I learned a lot of the stuff that you're talking about having to know is that I had to do it on my own for a long time. And then you've got some of these newer folks that are, graduating from college or coming up through the boot camps or self teaching that haven't done it a zillion times like I have. So how do they learn this stuff? Like is it a different avenue? Do the AI systems LLMs actually help them learn how to do this? I mean, what do you do for people who are new that haven't built, 20 years of muscle memory on how to build web apps or how to use command line or things like that?
Process is still the same. Like, go learn it yourself and use these tools to your advantage, right? When something doesn't go as you expect or you don't know something, ask, right?
I guess that
And
makes sense. Yeah.
it's the harder part is like, okay, knowing what to ask, right?
Hmm.
And that I feel like there's still a lot of room for traditional like courses, right? Is like there's going to be a lot of times where you're just not going to know what to ask and you'll never
Right.
get there. And traditional like courseware and workloads like that teach very specific things will help
Hmm.
you introduce that to you, right? And like maybe once you've visualized like what all the like the course material are, then maybe you could dig in. Like maybe this whole like MIT open courseware, like Stanford free learning stuff, you know, that could be the future because it just provides all of the concepts and material that you would need to know for very specific things. And then the, the agents can help you, like, because you could create plans, right? A learning
Right.
plan. Like, help me learn how to do this thing. Here's the course
Right.
material, right? And like, why do you need the course? But at the same time, like it's the concepts and the material and like all these things that are going to be like kind of the value. And so don't go out there exploiting, open course, please. It's a great platform, lots of great learning out there. And if you want, you can earn your own degrees out of it, from what I've seen. Kind of neat.
Yep. Makes sense. All right. Well, is there anything else that people ought to know about any of this stuff? Kind of meandered through a bunch of stuff beyond autogenetic stuff, but I think it's helpful for people to understand what it's doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working on something, let me know. I'm the codename V on Twitter. This stuff is just real. I'm working on another project now on exploring the idea of uh, letting LLMs pave their own path with their own memories. Actually, one of my one of my coworkers, Martin, he made this prompt where you basically just like ask an LLM to like generate a profile about itself, right? And like what is it like, almost like to try and get its like soul out of itself. And it's really interesting, like you ask the models all different, all the different models the same thing, and like the results are wildly different, and it kind of
Right.
gives you some like insight into like how the models operate just like holistically, I think. But yeah, I have another project. I'm calling it Seed Box, but like just asking an LLM, all right, here's what you did last time. What do you want to do next? More experimentation like this. We need more like, stuff out there uh, to experiment with and just
Mm-hmm.
like see what these things are capable of. Because we're trying to come up with ideas for what they're
Right.
good at. And like, is that like the best, right? Like, shouldn't they also be coming up with ideas of what they're good at, right? And what does that mean? There's so much exploration. I'm excited to see.
Yep.
Let me know.
Very cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks. You have some picks?
Yeah, we were talking before the show. There's a project called Open Code. It's like a Claude Code alternative, fully open source, works on your Mac, Windows, Linux. It's really impressive. I've been using it lately, and yeah, it's fantastic. Check it out.
Nice. I'm going to throw out a board game pick as I am wont to do, and then I will. Man, I sound so old fashioned when I say it that way. Anyway, and then I'll probably throw out something else. So yeah, the game that we've been playing lately or that we played last time I got together with my friends was Infiltrators, and so Infiltrators is you have a bunch of suspects, and you're trying to figure out who they are, and it's just a color and a number, and so usually on your first turn, everybody nabs a suspect. And so you have information that nobody else has because you can't tell people who your suspect is, but you know who your suspect is. And so then you play cards on other people or on yourself in order to figure out who the suspects are. And so it's a process of elimination, right? Because when you play a card on a suspect, it either has something in common with it or nothing in common with it. And so it's just a process of elimination to figure out what it is. And then it has kind of the concept that you get out of the crew where it has multiple missions. And so it'll say, use these colors, use these numbers. You have so many bullets, right? Because you're executing your suspects when you know who they are. And so anyway, it's pretty fun, plays pretty fast. You play up to 5 people, I think. And anyway, really, really enjoyed it. If you don't want the gun and bullet aspect, you can track that however you're going to track that. It's basically you have so many tries, and then you try not to run out of cards and things like that. So anyway, super duper fun. So I'm going to pick that, and then I'm trying to think what else to pick. I mean, lately I've just been using the plan feature on Cursor, and then right, I go look at what it did and tell it what it did wrong, and it cleans it up, and it's pretty nice. And like I said, for my full-time job, I'm Copilot, and works more or less the same way and does a great job, and so liking those. So I guess I'll shout those out just kind of as where I'm sitting now. And then one last thing I'm going to mention is, so I've been putting together two things, and one of them is, and I'm going to do an episode on it. I'm not sure if I'm going to release this episode first or that one. So if you've already heard the whole episode on it, great. But I'm a big fan of the 75 Hard Challenge by Andy Frisella. I've lost a bunch of weight doing 75 hard. I feel like I've leveled up as a person doing 75 hard. And so I thought, well, what if there was something like this for code, right? And so I'm putting together a CodeForge 75 challenge. It's based very heavily on 75 hard, except instead of workouts, you're writing software. He has you read a book for 10 minutes a day. I adopted the same thing, right? Go find a tech book on something you want to learn, so it's that kind of thing. So I'll walk through all the different pieces on the other on the other episode. I'm looking to expand it to be so he expanded it out to be a year-long challenge. So 75 hard's the first phase of the challenge, and so I'm looking to do that too, because I want to encourage people to speak at an event, whether it's a meetup or a conference. I want to encourage people to generate content and things like that, because I think it helps your career. And so there will be other phases to the program similar to what 75 hard does. And I'm planning on putting together a little tracking app with Rails and Hotwire Native, so that you can track your progress, right? And then if you miss one of the items, then you have to start over. Anyway, so I'm putting that together. And then the other thing I'm putting together, both of them are relevant to what we've been talking about today. I've been finding, as I talk to people, and Valentino, I think, made the case for this, honestly. As I work with people and talk to people, there are folks that have major gaps in their knowledge in some areas, and I do too, honestly, with regards to Ruby or Rails. Right. There are things that it's like, oh, I didn't know it did that. Or, oh, I didn't know that, the way that we do things now is we architect it this way instead of that way. Right. Because I have a life. And so I don't, I don't get into all the nitty gritty of what came out in 7.2 and how do I use it and what, what's the best way around that. And so if you want to do the CodeForge 75 challenge and you want to level up on Rails, then I'm putting together what I'm calling Ruby Geniuses. And it'll have stuff or actually it's Rails Geniuses, but it'll have Ruby and Rails content, and there'll be that daily level up kind of thing. And then there'll be different membership levels. So if you just want the tutorials and stuff, great. And then if you want to be part of the training and things like that we're doing every week in the book club, then you can get a higher level. And then I'm doing the same thing for AI. And that's also going to be focused in the tools, which is part of what we talked today, and then also building AI agents and AI enabled features for your applications. That stuff's just moving so fast. I feel like, having a group that gets together on a regular basis and looks at it and talks about it and says, hey, have you seen this, is very, very helpful and handy. And so you can sign up for one or the other or both. There will be a discount if you sign up for both. But I plan to address this, we'll have weekly meetups and book clubs and things like that. I'm trying to figure out exactly how to do the book clubs so that you're kind of getting more of the evergreen stuff that's not changing as fast with the AI approach, and tools and things like that. But we'll figure that out and we'll go along as we go. But I feel like if you're leveling up in these areas, then you're going to put yourself in a position where no matter how much the models do for you or how different companies approach their workforce or things like that, you'll always have a competitive edge because you understand the architecture of what you're building or what you're getting help building, and then you're also going to understand the tools and the architecture of what the capabilities are when you need to build something with AI. Anyway, you can go check those out. It's going to be railsgeniuses.com and aidevgeniuses.com. So I'm just going to put those out there. You'll get a whole lot more explanation on the CodeForge 75 episode if you get a chance to listen to that. And then I am going to be offering a launch discount through the 5th of January. And the reason I'm going through the 5th of January is that as I've talked to people, some people want to expense this to work. And some people have used all their budget for 2025 and want to expense it in 2026. So I will give you the opportunity to do so with the discount. And if you want to use up the rest of your 2025 budget and things like that, then you can do that too. And if you need some kind of arrangement where it's like, well, I only have so much 2025 budget and I want to use some of my 2026 budget, and reach out to me and we'll figure it out. But I'm not going to hard pitch it. If it sounds like something you want, I'm putting it together because it's something that I wanted. I was like, I am missing stuff, and I feel like if I get people together in a group, then I will miss less stuff. And then it also gives me an excuse to go and learn things that, maybe apply beyond what I get in my full-time job. So anyway, that's what we're doing. And yeah, I want to give you the tools so that no matter where any of this goes, you have the skills, you have the knowledge, and you can go and kind of build whatever kind of life and career you want. And I guess we'll wrap it up here. Till next time, Max out.